This is Mark Gunn Media.
Hit it!
Welcome to Gunshots Straight from the Hip. I'm your host, Mark Gunn. The views expressed on this program are those of the host and guests and not necessarily reflective of anyone or any entity associated with this broadcast. Today's episode, Believe, the Crisis of Confidence. So I'm watching an episode of America's Got Talent this week, and there was this one hopeful that really spoke out to me. A young singer that had a really good voice. It wasn't his performance that struck a chord with me, pardon the pun. It was his self-confidence, more specifically, a lack thereof. Now, by means of full disclosure, a little about my background. I'm a second-generation musician turned producer. I also spent over 30 years as a radio and television personality. These are professions that require having a rather large ego. Check. However, if one wants any longevity in this business, it also requires an extreme amount of self-awareness and humility. Throughout my media career, I've always worked with talented people in some way, shape, or form. As an on-air talent, production director. Yeah, I was one of the guys responsible for a lot of the commercials you complained about. Music director. Yeah, I was the guy responsible for a lot of the music you complained about. And finally, as a program director. Yeah, I was the guy responsible for the overall sound of the radio station you either loved or hated. As a musician and on-air talent, I was always my harshest critic. My mom will tell you that I've been that way since I was a kid. It was that drive and people that believed in me that enabled me to work in some of the biggest markets in the country and make lasting friendships with some of the giants of the industry. I was blessed to be able to sit under the learning tree of some of the most knowledgeable teachers in the industry, and it was that education that ultimately led me into programming and producing. The underlying constant of every interaction I had with my colleagues was that I was always coaching, always teaching. It was my ego that told me that I would leave the business in better shape that I found it in. It was my self-awareness that told me that while I was a good air talent, my real strength was behind the scenes. Same thing musically. I was a decent singer with a good sound, but my real strength was in guiding others in creating their sound. In short, I could produce better music for others than I could make for myself. Fast forward to the here and now. In addition to my work with Mark Gunn Media, Inc., I also work in IT support for one of the largest internet service providers in the country. My job is to help customers with their technical issues and provide answers to any questions they may have about them. I also serve as a customer service coach of sorts. I work with my colleagues in helping them to improve their overall interaction with customers. My experience in media management helps me in that regard big time. What does all this have to do with the kid from America's Got Talent? Everything. One of the things that gets under my skin is seeing a really talented person that everyone else believes in, but they don't believe in themselves. I've dealt with this in my role as program director, producer, and customer service coach. Now, everyone deals with self-doubt. I certainly did when I first left radio. I mean, so much of my identity was tied to the media. Still is to some degree. Now, it was hard for me to separate Mark Gunn the person from Mark Gunn the brand. Now, instead of seeing it as a hindrance, I use it to my advantage. At least in Louisville, Kentucky, the name Mark Gunn and the brand mean something. Someday, it'll have meaning everywhere else. I really think it's because of my talents and strong belief in that talent. Bottom line, Mark Gunn Media gets results. By the way, if you want to learn more about what we do, log on to the website at www.markgunmedia.com. Now, if you're already here, explore the rest of the site once you're done listening to this podcast. All right, now back to what we were talking about. Helping others cut through the fog of self-doubt and a lack of self-confidence can be tricky. Trying to get them to see themselves as others see them can be hard. With radio talent, the process is somewhat tangible. You can actually listen to past performances and point out the strengths and talk about the areas of growth on the one hand. On the other hand, it's nice to have our ego stroked every now and then. That's why I made it a habit of hotlining a talent whenever I heard them do something really good on the air. It lets them know that you have a vested interest in their success. I just wish that more program directors would do this. With musicians, the process is always somewhat abstract in that there's either a lot of layers that you have to get through, or it can be as simple as one of my favorite quotes from Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon.
Don't think. Feel. It is like a finger pointing away to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory.
Quite a few musicians tend to overthink what they're doing, which leads to self-doubt, which leads to lack of confidence, which leads to subpar performances. One of my favorite recording sessions was working with a local group called Lotus Blake. We were finishing up a song called Not to Be a Fool, which ends with an extended guitar solo. We did the first pass, and the guitarist wasn't quite happy with his performance. The problem, it was, as I saw it, way too much analysis and not enough badassitude.
It's getting hard now not to sing the blues. It's getting hard now to tell who's who.
I simply told him to give me the baddest of badass solos that he felt. The result? Magic. And the song remains my favorite from that project. In other situations, you have to really get personal in order to get to the root cause of that lack of confidence. Now, I've found that this works really well for me as a customer service coach. This is in no way to suggest that I have a degree in psychology or anything like that. What I have, and again, it's that self-awareness thing, is an intuition about people. One case was with a teammate that I nicknamed the Silent Assassin. Very quiet and unassuming young lady who was struggling with the customer service aspect of her performance. Now, I needed to know what made her tick and figure out a way to make it relate to the job. Likes, dislikes, personal interests, etc. Once I found the key to her personal success, we unlocked the door together, and now she's one of my best performers. Turns out that she was just always shy and didn't have anyone to really push her outside of her comfort zone. Once again, back to the kid on America's Got Talent. The coolest thing to me about his appearance was his interaction with Simon Cowell. A lot of you knew Simon from American Idol and what a jerk he could be, but I like Simon because I see him as a producer first, more so than a judge. So when he tells a contestant that there's something there, I believe him, because in this kid, I was able to see the same thing too. Now, he may not end up winning the competition, but I hope that he comes away as a stronger performer with a stronger belief in himself. Now, this is true of anyone who needs to buy into themselves. Doesn't matter what aspect of your life may be involved. Everyone has a je ne sais quoi, that certain something that serves as the linchpin to your overall self-confidence. The problem is that they don't see it, even though other people do. For me, it's taken most of my adult life to really believe in myself, to get the buy-in, as it were. It was easier while in the media because there were tangible ways to measure success. The downside was that so much of that success could make you a one-dimensional person to where you don't have an identity outside of your profession. Now, this was another crisis of confidence that I had to battle through once I got out of radio, and I suspect that the kid from America's Got Talent will go through it too. Some final thoughts after this. This episode brought to you by thelocalplug502.com, a comprehensive website designed as a guide to a Louisville you may not know about. The best places for food, drinks, and fun, all off the beaten path. Thelocalplug502.com was designed by a professional in the hospitality industry, so you get the real deal when it comes to places to go and things to do. This ain't your local boring Chamber of Commerce website. So if you really want to get to know the city, or if you plan on coming to Louisville anytime soon, check out thelocalplug502.com. If you're an advertiser, one of the most important things about getting your message out is actually standing out from the rest of the crowd. If you're listening to this program right now, this is where you'd hear your commercial. As an exclusive sponsor of Gunshots Straight from the Hip, your commercial is professionally produced and gets a longer shelf life based on your needs. Gunshot Straight from the Hip is a unique and compelling program unlike anything else in the marketplace. Episodes are available for download on iTunes, TuneIn, and MarkGunMedia.com. And depending on how you tailor your message, the potential for new and repeat customers is that much greater. Best of all, it's extremely cost-effective. If you'd like more information on how you can be a sponsor of this broadcast, call Mark Gun Media Inc. at 502-407-0283. That's 502-407-0283. Or log on to markgunmedia.com. For downloads of this and past episodes and information about all the multimedia services we offer, log on to our website at www.markgunmedia.com. That's markgunmedia.com. Welcome back to Gunshots Straight from the Hip. We're talking about believing in oneself and the crisis of confidence. One of the things I thought about as I was writing this was the very real danger of the society that we live in now. Belief in oneself is crucial to one's survival, but there are those who take it to delusional levels. You know who I'm talking about. Folks who will tell anyone that will listen that they are the greatest thing since sliced bread. What's worse is that there's no one in their circle honest enough to tell them otherwise. We live in a society where potentially hurt feelings are more important than the truth. What you end up with is self-absorbed, narcissistic, delusional, no-talent hacks that prove to be more harmful not only to themselves, but to the rest of us as well. What? You thought I'd make it at least through one podcast without taking a shot at Donald Trump? Anyway, fact of the matter is, truth needs a revolution so that those who really have the talent but not the belief in themselves can be elevated over those that have the belief but not the talent. We need more believers in themselves and more believers in those talented believers. Special thanks to my family, Barbara Mack, Monique, Tracy, Daryl, Tanya, Lori, and Olivia, Arts, Jessica, William Jr., and William III, my wife Tracy, every extraordinary radio talent and programmer I've been honored to work with throughout my career, my radio mentors, Rick Taylor, Tony Fields, the real Rick James, Hurricane Dave Smith, Kathy Hughes, owner of Urban One, Green Bay Packers Hall of Famer Willie Davis, owner of All Pro Broadcasting, Mary Catherine Sneed, Alan Sneed, and Brute Bailey, just to name a few. Every musician and producer I've been humbled to learn from and perform with. Guitarist Dwayne Bailey, who I met back in 1988 when he was with the group Chicago, and got back in contact with almost 20 years later. Now, he's been a wonderful sounding board for ideas and gave me an original mix of Chicago's then unreleased Stone of Sisyphus project. Dwayne is in my top 5 list of guitarists I'd love to work with and produce. The late, great Maurice White of Earth, Wind & Fire. He and I perhaps had one of the earliest documented conversations about Earth, Wind & Fire and the band Chicago touring together. This was in the late 80s. They actually ended up touring together some 20 years later. The conversation we had off the air was much more interesting than the one we had while we were on the air. Steve Lukather, a hero to me since the late 70s, not only for his musicianship, which is absolutely insane, but his overall humanity. Can't wait for the release of his new book, The Gospel According to Luke. Steve, if you still want to do an audio version, look a brother up. Bruce Gaich. Maybe not a household name to the average person, but a true legend and musical badass. Dude's got literally thousands of hit records under his belt and a few of his own. I reached out to him for some feedback on a project that I was working on, and he was very quick and very gracious with a response. That's something I've never forgotten. Also missed an opportunity for us to hang out while I was in Nashville earlier this year. Hopefully, we'll get another chance. Tris Imboden, former drummer of Chicago, now touring once again with Kenny Loggins. Tris is what I would call California cool, and one of the most knowledgeable musicians out there. Now, I became a fan of his during his first run with Loggins back in the 70s. New marriage, new band, life is good. The Teacher, KRS-One, a freaking genius. Don't let anyone ever tell you any differently. Conversations turn into lessons, which benefit anyone who happens to be listening. The biggest compliment he ever gave me was an invitation to lecture during one of his classes. He was planning to open a school of metaphysics at that time. Hip-hop artist and businessman Paris, my Bay Area baby brother who made pro-blackness and knowledge of self an absolute must. I had the pleasure of working with him during his first full-length album. I was more of a cheerleader than anything else, and it was through his friendship that I began the exploration of Islam and subsequently ended up meeting Professor Bobby Seale of the original Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. Stokely Williams of Mint Condition, bar none one of the best singers on the planet and a criminally underrated drummer. I've told him this on way too many occasions. He gave me the nod of approval for my old radio theme song that the band co-wrote.
My man Static's on the track. Mark Gunn is on the mic, right?
My brother from another mother, the late, great Stephen Static Major Garrett. I am most proud of my personal and professional relationship with Steve. I was one of the first people to hear his single Lollipop well before it was finished and before Lil Wayne added his verses. We talked about it being a breakout year for him as an artist and had many heart-to-heart conversations about where he wanted to go. My most cherished memory was doing a remix of my radio theme song with him. I actually wrote his verse on the song while we were recording.
What Mark brings to the party's got it going on. What Mark brings to the party's getting you on your way home. What Mark brings to the party's keeping you in the mix. Mark Gunn in the afternoon on B96. Been locked, it won't be long till you hear your favorite song. 571B965. That's the way we keep it live. Keep it locked, it won't be long till you hear your favorite song. 571B965. That's the way you keep it live.
A true testament to his talent, more so than mine, was that people would actually walk up to me and sing the song no matter where I was. Special thanks to my Code Red family here in Louisville. One of my best and brightest students, KD, Brian Guess, Todd O'Meara, and Dave Moody. All Louisville-based musicians, just to name a few. All of who've contributed to my musical life by either my producing them or performing on stage with them. In either case, experiences I've never forgotten. And finally, anyone that's ever given me a word of encouragement and validation of my work. Thank you all for your belief in me, which allows me to believe in myself and the work that I'm trying to do. You've been listening to Gunshots Straight from the Hip. The views expressed are those of the host and guests and not reflective of any business entity or anyone associated with this broadcast. If you have any comments or want more information on how to be a sponsor, log on to our website at markgunmedia.com or call us at 502-407-0283. That's 502-407-0283. Thank you for listening.
Mark Gunn Media. No hype, no hoopla, just damn good work.